So yeah, I thought I would talk today about like the upcoming Resident Evil game that hasn't been officially announced, but everyone's been talking about it for the last 2 or 3 years. What it's going to entail, just the rumors about it, and it's as yet untitled, but they people call it Resident Evil 9. It's going to be the next game in within the chronological series within the numbered series. So there's been some speculation for a while now, but even more so recently, that it will be an open world game, and um, there's some justified fears with that going into it, because Resident Evil has typically been seen as a linear, not necessarily story driven game series, but um, it's kind of based around story beats as opposed to like mission beats or like completing like side quests or anything like that. They have introduced side quests more recently, like within Resident Evil 4, and I guess like Village kind of had like hidden off the beaten path stuff, like not side quests that were given to you by um, NPC or anything like that, but it had some of that open world. It was a semi-open world game. Most people claim it as, and RE4, even the original, had some aspects that felt like somewhat open world. Um, but with RE9, it's had longer development cycle, and they're now saying that the rumors are now saying that it's the most ambitious Resident Evil game. They're trying to make it um, uh, something different, that they're trying to break the mold once again, like they did with RE4 and RE7. And on one hand, my initial thoughts were that, excuse me, my thoughts were that they don't need to do that quite so soon, because they already broke the mold with 7, and then I would say they started the foundation of perfecting the genre with the RE2 remake, and then they perfected the genre with the RE4 remake. And I've heard other people say this as well, but going forward, like, I believe they should have at least that gameplay formula intact in terms of how the characters control, and the combat mechanics, and the upgrading and looting mechanics. All that is perfect. They perfected it with 4. They, I guess, kind of started the modern era with 7 in terms of where they wanted to go, and that included some of the gameplay elements that have continued on even till 4. With 2, that was really where the foundation was built for the third-person style survival horror modern gameplay, and then 4 added in a lot of the stuff that was previously in the original 4, and also was kind of tested out in Village, and also Village took from the original 4 and tried to like modernize it a bit. So RE4, the 2023 game, uh, took from the original RE4, RE2, and then Village to kind of it took all of that and then perfected it within the original RE4 framework and modernized it. And going forward, they should at least continue the gameplay style in that regard, for the character. Now, in terms of like the environment, they're saying they're going in a radically new direction. And at first, I'm like, well, I thought they were talking about the gameplay. I don't think they'll change the gameplay. Like, they would be dumb to. Like, they should put it in third person. If they do it in first person, I wouldn't be super upset because RE7 is probably my second favorite RE game of all time. No, it is. Once I played it in VR, I decided upon that. Like, yeah, like RE Village is, it's also great in VR. I haven't beat it in VR, but playing RE7 in VR and remembering back to when I originally played it, it was. I realized it was a watershed moment for me, just like the original Resident Evil game was a watershed moment for me. RE1 Remake is still my favorite of all time, though, because it just perfected, it just is the perfect survival horror game. But with doing an open world game for RE9, if that is what it'll be called, I think it could be done. Like, I really, really do. Having... well, look at the Silent Hill games, for example. Now, I'm not like the biggest... I guess I would say I'm not like super invested into the Silent Hill world because I haven't like spent enough time with it. Like, I love what the series is from what I've played of the games, like what the series is trying to do. In terms of aesthetics, like, it may even be like slightly more up my alley than Resident Evil. The thing is, Resident Evil has such a great gameplay loop, and it holds such a place in my heart because of the original games. I played them lots back in the day, and I could probably do a whole nother video about Silent Hill, my history with that, because it's kind of interesting. But I'll just say that I've only played the first game, played through it, completed it, like 2011, so long time ago, but it was on the PS3. And then the second game I played like halfway through. Third game played a little bit. Fourth game played a little bit. And that's it, I think. But from what I know of those games, and especially like what I've heard of the remake, actually, I mean, I'm assuming the remake's like the original too, like it just expanded. But you're in a city. So this is my idea. This is my idea for Resident Evil 9, if they want to do it open world. Well, first I'll say people are worried about the fact that it's gonna like get away from the labyrinthian aspect of Resident Evil. Whereas you go through, you try to, you don't know where to go. You just try a door, it doesn't work. You go to another door, doesn't work. You try another door, works. You go in that door. You find whatever is in there. It could be a puzzle, could be an item, could be an enemy. Usually, like one of the three, and then based off of what happens in there, then it kind of like dictates what you're going to do later on. But there also might have been another door that you could have went in, the fourth door that you didn't try, instead of going in that third door that you did go in, and that's where the non-linear aspects come in that people don't really. Like, people acknowledge it, but they still refer to Resident Evil games as kind of more linear in a sense. Sometimes they do. But the kind of loop of, like, you try a door, get in a door, whichever door opens, it could be one of three doors. You get the key item, if there's a key item there, if you fight the enemy, or if you have to solve the puzzle to get the key item, you do that. You go to one of the unlocked doors, you unlock that door, then it could be one of those three things again in that room. You deal with those. Then maybe you go to another door that you unlocked, or you go to the other door that was unlocked already, but you didn't try yet. And then you already did it out of order, like out of a different order than you could have gone in. And then also, like, the multiple endings that are like different choices you can make to get different endings, like within the first three Resident Evil games, and they carry it on a little bit in other games, but not as much. There's another aspect that's kind of non-linear within Resident Evil, like choosing different paths. But the kind of puzzle of trying to figure out the labyrinth of the environment, usually set in one environment until you complete that area, and then going to another environment, and completing that area, maybe like a third place or a fourth place, but allowing you to go back into each place at your will if you want to. Now, usually going back into each place like until like before you've completed the next place is pointless unless there's an item that you missed or like that you didn't have room to pick up or whatever, or you just feel like going back. But still having the option to go back is always cool. And then after you're completing maybe your second or third area, going back to the first or second area because you got a key in that second or third area, and then be able to unlock a new thing, fight new enemies, that sort of thing. That's the gameplay loop of Resident Evil games. And even RE4, although it had changed a lot of stuff, still maintained that to a certain extent. Enough that it still, I consider like a Resident Evil game. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't get the argument that it isn't. I get it, but I don't agree with it. So, applying that to RE9, the worries about it being open world, so I've like a scenario that's like similar to Silent Hill, but maybe a little bit more expansive. Say the game is based in a city. I've heard it might be based on an island, but whatever. Just apply it to an island, city, a city on an island, whatever. So you come into the city. You're like, say it's Raccoon City, and you're kind of an unknown character. Like before, if they were to do a prequel that's in Raccoon City, that's an open world game, this is how they could do it. It's like an unknown character. They come into Raccoon City before it's been destroyed, and they just see, oh, there's destruction all around. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know where everyone is. There's zombies walking around the streets, but it's still kind of empty. And there's just like, yeah, like I can go any way. It's not telling me where to go. So you go to try the first door on a building. It doesn't work. Okay, so maybe you pick up a few items along the way, kill a few zombies. You try the next door on a building. Doesn't work. Then you try a third door. That one opens. You go in there. And it's like a mini mansion or like a clock tower, like whatever. Or to use the Silent Hill example, it's like the hospital or something, or the apartment building. So you explore that area. Maybe it takes you like 2 hours to complete. It's like you navigate it like a labyrinth-esque sense, like the mansion, Spencer Mansion. And then once you've completed that in the same manner you would in like the original Resident Evil or any other traditional Resident Evil, there's like a mini boss at the end. You complete that boss. You got a whole bunch of loot along the way. If we're incorporating like RE4's loot, and then you got like a key item. You got key items to unlock all the individual doors within that mansion. We'll call it we could call it a dungeon. I'll call it a mansion, but it's essentially a dungeon. Then you can take that item, the key item, to another area that it doesn't tell you where it is, but it's like it'll be not a huge environment, like say like close to the size of maybe Silent Hill, or like half the size. It's like it'll be like 5 city blocks, so it'll be open enough that you can walk around it and it feels like you have like freedom, but it's still kind of closed off to you until you unlock more areas. So then you got the key at that mansion, you go to another mansion to unlock, and then you complete that takes another like 2 hours or so, and then you complete that, and then there's a third one that you can do. So maybe like 2 hours a piece, like 6 hours total if you're just doing the mansions or dungeons. But then there's also side areas, like you could go into like another building or another area. It could be like a locked off park, like some sectioned off area that's like kind of mansion-esque. And then you don't have to complete it, but you get more loot. Maybe get more like story information from characters or from notes. And maybe there's another like larger enemy in there you kill, and then you get something special from that, like another weapon or upgrade or something like that. But something that's not mandatory to the game, but you can do on your own. So that's kind of like a side quest thing. And then also possibly they could have like a few characters spread out in the hub world. So the hub world would be like the Raccoon City streets. Um, that you like you interact, like you go up to, you talk to, they give you some information, kind of like the Duke or the merchant, and then they it's basically like the blue notes for the missions in RE4. They just tell you like that there's some a bunch of rats you have to kill or whatever, and maybe they give a like a kind of description there. They like I like how they did in like RE7 and RE Village where they had the picture and it's like showed like it's around here, or they did that in RE4 as well. It's around here, but they don't tell you where it is, so you got to figure it out. Maybe give you a little bit more of a hint since it's an open area, just kind of like cater to the more difficult nature of having it open. Um, but yeah, don't tell you exactly where it is, so you don't run the risk of having the Assassin's Creed problem, having markers on the map, like and just like following markers. Um, but then maybe in within the just have those like NPC characters within the hub area, but don't have them in the dungeons to so it's doesn't like you can keep the horror element because maybe people would be worried about that with having like NPC characters all over the place. It would make it less scary. So maybe don't have them in there, or like keep it to a minimum. Like um, I don't know. I don't know how. I don't exactly have an answer for that, but just have them more contained to the hub area, maybe. Um, Unless there's like a character that's like a story situation, like maybe you run into someone within a cutscene in the mansions, and then they're gone after the cutscene. Um, so it's still you have the isolation aspect within the mansion areas, and then when you get out the hub area, then it's it's kind of more like an open world game. Like so you're gonna feel like when you're in the mansion areas, you're gonna forget that you're in an open world game. Be kind of like with Village, like especially being in the Dimitrescu mansion, um, that kind of felt like, oh yeah, I'm in like Resident Evil One, something like that. Um, so then also I thought like if we want to do like they're saying they're going to reinvent the series, and someone in the comments of this video I was watching was talking about like Dark Souls. If you go down that path, it's because people were already getting sick of open world games when when Elden Ring came out about 3 years ago. Um, so if they follow along with that, like kind of like what I was saying, they don't lead you on a path that you just kind of go where you like you naturally would go in a Resident Evil game. And then the dungeons, like the mansions, would be like the dungeons in Elden Ring, where it's like you kind of naturally come upon them, and then it's like a cool area like that. It's its own level. But then you have ones that you have to go in, but ones you don't have to go in. So that kind of creates that more of an illusion of player agency that open world games go for. Um, then also have areas that are kind of blocked off, like until you complete certain areas, and so that adds in the Metroidvania element. And I believe that I think it was kind of like that in Elden Ring. Like you couldn't go to certain areas until you got through an area that had like a lot of enemies. Because they would like shoot arrows at you or something. I don't know. Like I remember there being areas that were blocked off. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, yeah. And then also have areas that are like too difficult for you. Like take that Souls element of like you wander into an area, there's an enemy you can't fight, and you realize, okay, like this game's telling me, it's not telling me, it's showing me through the game language that I'm not supposed to be in here, but I can if I want to like have a professional difficulty level experience. Um, and then have that, but then the multiplayer element. So you could have co-op, have that where you can like choose between like you can have a character, you can have a player play with you the entire time or not. Like I don't know how they exactly would implement that, but like bring in this the outbreak elements, because a lot of people have been asking for that. It's like they should they should definitely have their own outbreak game, like just like a remake or a reimagining of Outbreak, because that would do very well. But they could implement it within this, sort of like a Dark Souls type of way, like have like the characters, like you can summon them in somehow, like make it relevant within the Resident Evil lore, how you're summoning them in. Maybe they come from a different city. You just call them up, and it's like they come into the city. I don't know, or helicopter in, like that. That would kind of make sense. Helicopter in. Um, it's like I need help or whatever, and then yeah, and then you have co-op, but you don't have to. It's like a unlimited time thing. If they die, then it's like the co-op's over. Then it's like if you're someone else in the game, like at a further point in the game, they die, then it's like it'll take a while for them to respawn. Maybe you can only spawn them outside of the dungeons. If you're in the dungeon, they die, then that's it. Then you lose them forever or whatever, something like that. Um, so it's like you got the open world aspect, you got the classic Resident Evil aspect. Um, you have the RE4 aspect of like the gameplay just being refined, like having the parries, having you don't have to have the parries if you don't want, if you want to make it more survival horror, but just having the same gameplay loop that Resident Evil 4 had. And then you also have the multiplayer aspect, like the Dark Souls style multiplayer. So it's like that's checking a bunch of boxes, but still keeping it within the Resident Evil framework. So then once you complete that area with like the 3 mansions, they each take 2 hours a piece. It's like, so without the side quests, it's like 6-ish hours, whatever. And then you fight like a main boss, like a hard, more difficult boss at the end of that, and then you move on to another section that opens up, like another part of the city, or it's like an underground area, or like a different city, maybe even. But then if you want to go back to that area, you can. Like it doesn't close off completely like it did in Village. So you complete that the same way, like a few dungeons, mansions, and then another area opens up, the third area. So it'd be like 4 in that way. It would be like the 3 sections, and but in this you can go back to them instead of like it being closed off. So it makes it both more like Resident Evil 1, where you can go back and forth as you please to the other areas, but also more open world, because that's what open world games are like. You complete a section and then another section opens up. That's what like especially a lot of the classic like open world games, like newer games, I think more areas are open, but like the Grand Theft Auto 3, I think that's what it was like your first 3 or 4 Grand Theft Auto games. So it's the best of both worlds. Like I don't see how that's a problem. And Evil Within 2 did a pretty good job of like having an open world structure within survival horror. Like I didn't like it as much as the first game because it was missing some of the design elements, like the very very creepy like original design elements. Like a lot of the environments felt bland like after you got past the first like section, and got into the open world. Um, but if it were a different game, like if it weren't Evil Within and it was like you thought of it as something else, like it was fun to play, like having the area going underground to like in the sewers to connect to the different areas and come up in different areas actually was really cool and fun. And like trying to find everything, like it was, I think where it got tedious is like trying to find, like I'm kind of person that in survival horror games I try to find every item that I can, and it's like with that it's like it took me so long to complete. So like I wanted to find everything and I couldn't. Like I got pretty close, but yeah, it just wasn't feasible. So but it was like a good kind of testing ground where it's like it still was scary. It was very scary. It was still a very scary game. It was different than the first game. Like the first Evil Within was still probably scarier, but like the second game was scary in its own regard, especially like in the second city section. Like that guy, like I think he had like he was like this guy. I don't know if he had a chainsaw or what. Like he was just like chasing you around. He was like this hulking guy, and he would spot you from like pretty far away. Like you'd hide and like try to get to other areas of the map, and you couldn't because he was always after you. Like something like that would be cool. Like having like a Nemesis type character do that in Resident Evil, implementing the RE2 Mr. X gameplay like with that like would work really well. So yeah, I think that's about it. Like I think that RE9 could work very well as a at the very least a semi-open world. What I aligned was like somewhere between semi-open world and fully open world, because like RE Village was semi-open world. Um, so I think they could push it a little bit further without completely breaking the mold. Like, don't go like Grand Theft Auto, like Assassin's Creed. Like, no, that would ruin it. Um, but if they did it like a little bit like Dark Souls, actually like more, it's like somewhere between Dark Souls and Elden Ring, because Dark Souls I think is semi-open world. And those games are very similar to survival horror and how they're structured. The environments is a labyrinth that you have to explore, go back and forth, and everything. So something like Dark Souls, but like more open, like the environment's more open, and having big sections, like big dungeons that you go through to complete, um, would actually like do what they're setting out to do in revolutionizing the series. Like that would actually, like if they didn't go super crazy with the action set pieces, like if they kept it horror within the mansion areas and didn't have like super crazy set pieces, just had the game bigger, like had the game longer, just more open ended, but kept it grounded in terms of the gameplay and like the cutscenes and just like the crazy plot or whatever. Like even if the plot got crazy like RE4, like it would still keep it like it would still be fine, but just don't have it like RE6. Um, and RE6 was linear, so if this is open world, like I think that actually open world I think actually lent itself better to Resident Evil than linear. I think, yeah. So yeah, those are my thoughts. So let me know what you think. This is my first video in a very, very, very long time. I was doing live streams for a little bit. I didn't upload them, but yeah. So I'll catch you later. Okay, bye.